割と白い。
Yeah, we're just gonna ignore the fact that one of those is actually more of a super form for a more traditional red. But yeah, it was just this brief scene from a Zenkaizer miniseries that pretty much inspired me to do this little video. It just really hit me how both Super Sentai and Precure have kind of been stuck doing the same old tropes and designs for so long that I think they really need to start branching out and try some new things. Now, of course, I'm not saying they should do anything overly drastic all at once that might alienate old fans, but little changes here and there, like with their designs, would help, which they just so happen to do with both franchises this same year. It helps that they also seem to be taking this opportunity to learn from some forgotten parts of their past to make the old new again. But before anything, I guess I should explain what the Zenkaizer are, considering this is more of a Precure channel. The series takes place in a dimension where a human world and a world populated by robotic beings known as the Kikainoids have merged into one. Most of the Kikainoid race want to get along with their new neighbors, but the ruling party of Kikaitopia, the Toji Tendo, seek to subjugate all parallel worlds. Thus, a new team of Super Sentai formed to stop them and free all of the parallel worlds they've already captured. This show is also meant to celebrate Super Sentai's 45th anniversary, and as a result, the Zenkaizer are basically a whole team of walking homages to previous series. Most notably with 4 of its members being Kikainoids with the ability to turn into small-scale versions of previous Sentai mechs like Daijujin, aka the Megazord, Daiboken, Majiking, and Gauking. Yeah, Sentai tends to have a lot of kings. Based on the first 10 or so episodes as of the time of this writing, I've been really enjoying this series. I think it has a lot of fun episodes with very likable characters, some good tributes to the series past, and it even tackled some deeper themes. Seriously, in its first episode, it addressed racism much better than anything out of Precure recently, with the Kikainoids being victims of it. Oh, and it also features Miyuki joining the ranks of Nodoka and Ruru as the cute Tokusatsu sidekicks. That said, the character I want to highlight for this video is the leader of this team, Kaito, aka Zenkaizer. We'll take a look at how both him and Manatsu might be paying tribute to the same source that came from some very turbulent times in Toei's history that almost saw the end of not just Sentai, but the whole company in general, and how they were rescued by an unexpected hero. With that in mind, let's play a little word association. Now, when you hear the term lead Sentai, or Ranger, what's the first word that pops into your head? And yet, even though he does have a large strip of red that runs down his costume, the abundance of white in it qualifies Zenkaizer as a white Sentai. There's also a lot of other colors there too that you could also call him a rainbow Sentai. And if the situation sounds at all familiar, I know there's been quite a bit of debate on what color Cure Summer is. For me personally, I do go with the side that says that Manatsu is a white/tropical colored Cure rather than the traditional pink. This has been back with the official website giving her that color on her icon, and really, if you knew nothing about Precure, would you call this a pink warrior when there's hardly any in her dress? Ironically though, while both of them are doing something different from the perspective of their more modern brethren, these designs actually kind of harken back more to Toei's early years in their heyday. With that, let's travel all the way back to the beginnings of Toei's Tokusatsu programming on Net TV, the current TV Asahi. There, they found success with the original Kamen Rider series thanks to the brilliant writing of Shotaro Ishinomori, who was pretty much Japan's answer to Stan Lee. Appropriate considering what's coming up. Anyway, the writers found continuous success up until Amazon. Now, while I haven't seen enough of the series to give any sort of critique, I can at least acknowledge why it remains the shortest Rider series ever with a measly 24 episodes. Translation: parental watch groups. Now yes, it was a little more violent than previous series, especially in regards to its fight scenes, though personally, I think themes of forced body modification and full-on deaths of family members are far more shocking. But I guess these Karens only ever look at the fight scenes and not some of the deeper nuances. And as a result of their complaints, Amazon suffered in the ratings and was eventually pulled from its time slot. So with that out of the way, I'm sure Toei would never suffer from them ever again, like just 3 years later, or even 3 decades later. Fortunately, Kamen Rider did eventually find some new time slots on different, smaller broadcasters with lower overall viewership, but that's a different story. What did matter was the fact that Toei still had that time slot on TV Asahi, and thus decided to fill it with something else. Thus, Shotaro Ishinomori once again created the basis for another soon-to-be massive franchise with Himitsu Sentai Go Ranger. And it not only ended up eclipsing the Riders, but to this day it also remains the longest running Sentai ever, spanning 84 TV episodes over the span of 2 years. Hence why they can say that the 45th series is indeed celebrating the 45th anniversary, unlike certain other IP. That said, Go Ranger initially wasn't meant to be the star of a franchise, and in fact, Ishinomori wanted to do something very different for his next show that would take up the time slot. This wouldn't exactly work out for the better. I'll be honest, from the little I've seen of its earlier episodes, this show wasn't that bad in terms of violence and darker elements. Again, even before Amazon, I think Kamen Rider got away with a lot worse, but I guess if you show enough of the red and death, then that's more than enough to hit the panic button for the 70s Karens. As a result, a lot of TVs were turned off, so Toei had to invent a trope that they would end up falling back on a lot in the oncoming years, the Sixth Ranger. I mean, technically Sokichi was the 5th member of what was originally a 4-member team, but whatever, this trope has never had any sort of consistency. But yes, this is the character we've been building up to, Sokichi Bamba, aka Big One, aka the guy Ken Tsugisaki referenced in that one episode of the Student Consul's Discretion. Rainbow! The design of his costume has been confirmed to have influenced Kaito's, and I would assume also Manatsu's. And honestly, considering it was something not originally planned and actually put together part way into the series, this is actually a pretty great design. Yes, it is mostly a white bodysuit base, but the rainbow colored accents give it a nice touch and help to distinguish him as the new leader of Jacker. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention, as soon as this new white hero appeared, he took the position of team leader from the original Red. Sound familiar? And unfortunately, that was just one small reason why people didn't care for Sokichi initially. Oh sure, he popped the ratings with his initial debut like any advertised new character would in a show not just Six Rangers. But it didn't take long before he became a total Gary Stu who solved most of the conflicts on his own with hardly any input from the rest of his team. That combined with the much lighter and softer tone of the show to appease the watch groups, who probably still wouldn't have let their kids watch, they ended up driving away their actually loyal fans who were enjoying the initial show that even seemed to be going in some interesting directions before Sokichi's arrival. From there, it just became a total mess that couldn't decide which direction it wanted to take. Did it want to be more serious or more comedic? Again, isn't it interesting how history tends to repeat itself? Thus, it wasn't long before Jacker came to a sudden and tragically anticlimactic end. With that, Ishinomori never wrote for Sentai ever again, and the franchise very nearly saw an early end. And yet, why is it that Sokichi seems to be the only thing people reference about Jacker these days, including with the current series? Well, I think it's a combination of a few things. First off, we should probably explain how Sentai even came back from the brink of cancellation, and by extension, how Toei managed to survive to this day, as losing Super Sentai might very well have meant the end for them altogether. For that, a certain friendly neighborhood superhero came in for the save. Spider-Man! With Sentai going on hiatus right after Jacker in 1978, Toei managed to strike a deal with Marvel to make tokusatsu adaptations of their IPs, of course starting off with their most popular and well-known character, who got his superpowers from aliens and also hid his suit in something on his hand. Yeah. Are you guys sure you're adapting the right hero from the right company even? I kid though. From what I've seen of the show, it's classic campy tokusatsu fun, with Spidey, named Takuya Yamashiro here, being a pretty cool and admirable superhero. Honestly, I do kind of like him more than the Iron Boy here. Heck, it even managed to turn Stan the Man Lee into a bit of a Tokusatsu fan, as he really did enjoy it, and even developed a friendly relationship with Shotaro Ishinomori. The comic book writers of today only wish they could match up with the power levels of these two together, hence why they tried to downplay one of them. Moreover, this show contributed something else very important to the Toei of today.
Did he say his giant spider robot?
Yes, the prototype for every Sentai mech ever came from a Japanese tokusatsu very loosely based on the wall crawler. Try and wrap your head around that. That said, Leopard in here has a pretty awesome design, and again, considering his significance with Super Sentai, I think he deserves to be lined up with the RX-78-2 as one of the most significant mechs to ever come out of Japan. Sadly, licensing issues will prevent them from even acknowledging this guy, especially considering they're all owned by the mouse nowadays. Regardless, thanks to the decent ratings and toy sales this show produced, plus some more backing from Marvel, Toei managed to produce another superhero team that wasn't going to be a Sentai initially, but rather... To be exact, Battle Fever J was going to be an adaptation of Captain America with Captain Japan, flanked by his own international team of superheroes, so yeah, pretty much an Avengers team, with the pink of the team even being called Miss America. No, not that self-insert. However, while Marvel would help to produce it, as well as the following two series, ultimately they did become less hands-on and kind of just let Toei do their own thing. As a result, Earth 79203 never became a thing, thank God, and Toei had free range to retroactively make Jacker and Go Ranger the first two Super Sentai, a long-running franchise was truly born, and the rest, as they say, is history. With that, the dust of its initial failings managed to clear, and I think people started to really look back on Jacker and realize what they were missing out on, as it soon received vindication. Yes, the show was a little darker and edgier than Go Ranger, but it still did have some of that enjoyable campiness from back in the day, and more importantly, it was doing its own thing and branching out. And while Sokichi was disliked initially, I think even some of his strongest detractors had to admit, at least this dude stood out and was memorable. Between his great costume and Hiroshi Miyauchi being a very charismatic actor, I think people were able to overlook some of the character's major flaws, like being a Gary Stu. Of course, his popularity really started to resurge once he returned in some of the later crossovers, and people began to notice and say, hey, this dandy old dude has a lot more personality than some of these modern kids. And I think that's the most important thing Toei needs to take away from all of this. They need to create characters, and especially leads, who can stand out again, both in terms of their personality and their clothes. While I have actually enjoyed several of the more recent series, I also can't deny that Super Sentai has been on a very bad financial decline that I think is at least partially because there is a feeling of sameness with all of their leads. And while it hasn't been as drastic, or at least not in constant decline, Precure has yet to really dig itself out of the hole that Gold Princess unfortunately dug. In the case of the Precure, I can kind of understand them not wanting to try anything too risky with their pink leads, considering being too different led to never-ending complaints from the Karens. But, you know, considering that Jacker managed to make a comeback, and even Gold Princess going by the NHK polls, I do think it was high time that they started to shake things up a little. While it's hard to say where they're going to take Manatsu and Kaito's characters going forward, I do get the feeling like they are at least going in the right directions, as even indicated by that Zenkaizer miniseries clip I used at the beginning. For clarification, that miniseries was about Kaito coming to grips with the fact that he was a very unusual Sentai lead, with even a proper Zenkai Red coming in, and trying to take away his unique team from him, and just turn them into another run-of-the-mill Sentai team. In the end though, they recognized that while there will always be a place for the more traditional formats, every team should also try to find their own unique identity. Concurrently, we got an episode of Tropical Rouge where they fantasized about using the big bomber, so yeah, I don't know how much more proof you need for me to explain how Manatsu is basically supposed to be Sokichi's daughter. That, and going by episode 10 at least, they do seem like they are going to take her character in different directions, like not having her being a totally two shoes. In the end, I will say I have become a little more optimistic about both of these franchises after all this research. To me, Toei does seem to be learning from its past, even when it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Hell, the fact that they were working with Marvel and Stan Lee in his prime back then should tell them it was one of the most creative periods ever. Again, time will tell what will become these multicolored heroes and what they'll be able to bring to the table. The abundance of white in their costumes could symbolize clean new starts for their franchises, or that they might end up becoming bland as all hell. But I think we'll wrap things up with another quote from that miniseries when a veteran talked directly to Kaito, who wasn't so kitschy. I mean, yeah, he got one line in, voiced by Tomokazu Seki, but no, Kaito got encouragement from Tsuruhime, a white Sentai, who, unlike Sokichi, was a leader from the start of the series, and also happened to be the first female lead Sentai ever.
姿形、男も女も関係ない。大切なのは
Now that's how you do representation right. With that, I'm gonna take my time with part 3 of my Gold Princess review, at least until I'm settled in my new place. I'm actually currently surrounded by a bunch of boxes. I know some of you are getting a little antsy, and I will apologize for making you wait, so I'll do whatever I can in between all of this. Believe me, I do want to get to the next part of the show after I had to unfortunately bring up its feelings in this video. But yeah, look forward to it, especially when we get to that episode. Thank you for watching, and until next time though, farewell for now my friends, and oh, by the way, Marvel's working relationship with Toei did result in a few animation projects, including the Transformers movie, and an unsuccessful pilot for an X-Men cartoon. Bit of a pity, as I actually would have loved to see more of the Ozzy Wolverine before Hugh Jackman was ever a thing.
Welcome her. Wait, she's not joining the X-Men, is she? She's just a kid.
Oh, what could have been.